In the beginning, there was nothing. Then there were stars, and planets, and a pile of chemicals on those planets. And this pile of chemicals gave rise to life. And one of the most important of those chemicals for life was iron. Iron is a resource that one organism will fight to the death with another organism to get. The organism with more iron was more likely to survive and reproduce. The struggle for iron was continuous. Organisms would change and adapt the way that they tried to gather iron so that they would come out on top. Eventually humans come into the fray. And humans, of course, fight for iron, as every organism prior has done. While most humans don't have any trouble getting the iron that they need, there is one section of humans who really could never have enough iron. These, of course, were the Vikings. Vikings lived a very warlike lifestyle and would charge into battle and raid and pillage and do whatever other Viking things they deemed appropriate at the time. However, the constant fighting led to a lot of blood loss, and there happens to be a lot of iron in blood. This meant that the Vikings had constant anemia, which is iron deficiency, which generally leads to weakness and fatigue, which are not very Viking-like attributes. So of course, the most successful Vikings overcame this. Vikings adapted. They selected for a mutation that allowed them to absorb iron constantly and not have any real regulation of the intake of it. This led to expendable iron in their bodies. The Vikings could now do their Viking things without worrying about becoming anemic or losing too much blood. This mutation and disease is called hemochromatosis. Vikings were very good at spreading their genetics to many population in their pillaging activities, and their genes traveled throughout Europe. Many Europeans now carry the gene for hemochromatosis. Hemochromatosis, when left untreated, leads to death around the age of 40. However, it is currently 1340, and if you live to 40, you've done better than most. So really, hemochromatosis is not all that bad. But life in Europe is about to get a lot worse. In 1346, the Black Death struck Europe. This plague wiped out about 30% of Europe's population in 7 years. The Black Death, or bubonic plague, is a bacteria that targets communication between immune cells. It invades a human body and fights immune cells such as macrophages, and then replenishes itself off the nutrients of its deceased enemies. One of these nutrients is, of course, iron. The fed bacteria would reproduce itself with these resources and continue its rampage through the body. The Europeans that carried this gene for hemochromatosis had more iron in their body. That means that there is more iron available for the plague. It would seem that they would be more susceptible since they have a wealth of this resource and no real way to protect it. However, most of them survived. Somehow hemochromatosis increases iron in the body but decreases iron in macrophages, the part of the immune system that does the fighting. This means that when the plague invades the bodies of these Viking descendants, the macrophages, if bested in battle, will give up almost no iron. The plague just used all of its resources and energy to fight the immune cells and reaps no reward, and starves to death. The Viking body could retain its iron and give up very little to the invading bacteria. This causes the immune system to overcome the plague, and the person survives. Unfortunately, not everyone in Europe had hemochromatosis, and many died. But this means that a larger portion of the people who survived the plague had hemochromatosis. This manifests itself today. Around 30% of the people who are European or of European descent are a carrier of or have hemochromatosis. Maybe this means that those with hemochromatosis today have a death sentence at the age of 40. But maybe they will be more likely to survive over their peers if another plague hits. Hemochromatosis is just one of the many ways that humans adapted to fight for their iron against bacteria and other external threats. Every organism adapts and tries to possess more resources, and this small mutation is a manifestation of the struggle that has been going on since the beginning of life itself. A war for iron. On a side note, if you do have hemochromatosis, a very easy treatment is just mimic being a Viking and bleed a lot. That's code for go donate your blood.